Quick reminder before we get started, if you haven't subscribed or followed this podcast on your favorite podcast platform yet, I would really appreciate it if you click the follow button now or the subscribe button, as it will really help us a lot. In this episode of Recovery Snippets, I speak with Dr. Anita Johnson, who's an eating disorder psychologist, and she uses amazing metaphors and visualizations to support disordered eating recovery or eating disorder recovery, basically to improve your relationship with food. And I actually went to check the research, if there's hard research on metaphors, visualizations, and apparently there is really good research to show that these have been actually shown to improve adherence, helping you stick with your eating disorder recovery journey or disordered eating recovery journey. Basically to improve your relationship with food, because we all know it's very, very difficult. So let's listen to some metaphors which have been shown to, which actually just blew my mind. So let's jump into the recovery snippet.
So I use metaphors. So I'm a storyteller and I like to use the language of metaphor to help people understand. So here's a metaphor that I would share. Imagine you're on the banks of a raging river. It's pouring down rain. You slip, you fall in, and you're drowning. You're getting pulled down through the rapids. And along comes a big log and you grab on. And the log saves your life. It keeps your head above water when surely you would have drowned. And eventually it carries you to a place in the river where the water is calm. And from there, you can see the riverbank, but you can't get there because you're holding onto the log. So the irony is, everything that saved your life is now getting in the way of you going where you want to go in life. And to make it more complicated, there's always people on the shore yelling at you, let go of the log, let go of the log. And you feel like an absolute idiot because you can't let go of the log. So the way I see it is letting go of that log may not be the very best thing to do initially, because what happens if you let go of that log, start to swim to shore because that person is the person who loves you more than life itself, or that's the top dietitian or therapist in the country. And you get halfway there and realize, oh, I don't have the strength to make it. Well, that means you don't have the strength to make it back to the log either. And you're really sunk. So I believe we all have a wise part of ourselves that will not let us let go of anything until we're good and ready. So what do you do instead? Well, let go of the log, try floating. And when you start to sink, grab back on. Then let go of the log and practice treading water. And when you get tired, grab back on. Then let go of the log and swim around it once, grab back on. Twice, grab back on. 10 times, 100 times, 200 times, whatever it takes for you to have the strength and confidence to make it to shore. Then you let go of the log. So what I'm doing with this metaphor is I'm introducing the idea that there's a reason. There's a reason for whatever it is you're doing with food. And you need to find out what that reason is, because that's going to show you what the skills are you need to develop so you don't have to hold on, so that you can get where you want to go. So that's a metaphor that I would use to help people understand, okay, this is what the process looks like. Because most people, all they know is dieting and willpower and all that kind of nonsense that just won't help.
Yeah.
It certainly can help them get where they want to go in life. You can't be, and for some people, a diet plan is really important if all their signals are scrambled. They don't know when they're hungry. They don't know when they're full. Their hormones are out of whack. I mean, they've been dieting their whole lives. I mean, a food plan can be really important, but as you know, it's not forever, right? It's to stabilize. It's to, to really, it's like if you broke your leg, right? You get a cast put on. Well, you're not going to have that cast the rest of your life. It has to stabilize, and then maybe you'll take the cast off and you'll have a boot. Well, you're still not going to run on it, but you can kind of get around. But eventually you're going to lose the boot, and then you're going to try walking a little bit. And then eventually maybe you'll get to run again. But it's a process. And the thing is, with diets, weight loss diets, there's no understanding of that. Everything is like oh, lose, X number of pounds in X number of weeks. End of story. And it's like, oh man, that's a trap. That's a big trap.
Wow, I'm just mind blown with those metaphors. You made me fall in love with metaphors now.
So good.
I probably might use those.
Please do.
Yeah. And well, as a therapist, what are some like actionable steps someone can do to? Are there any exercises people can do to work on any of these skills?
Yeah. Well, I can kind of walk you through one of them.
Absolutely, go for it. Yeah.
Okay. So this is sort of an imagination exercise. So you use your superpower, which is your imagination. Some people like to say to me, well, I don't have a good imagination. And I like to say, well, what do you think worry is? Right? Worry is a bad use of a good imagination. So we're going to put imagination to good use in this situation. So imagine that you have two tanks. I'm going to call them fancy words, tank A and tank B. Okay. And tank A is the tank you fill when you need physical nourishment and you fill it with food. Tank B is the tank you fill when you need emotional or spiritual nourishment, non-physical kinds of nourishments. And you fill it with things like attention, affection, appreciation, meditation, prayer, and so on. But what happens is most of us think there's only one tank because our language limits us. When we talk about hunger, we fail to realize there's all kinds of hungers. So we think there's just one tank, and before we know it, tank A is full and overflowing, but we're still hungry. Or we're afraid to even fill tank A because it seems like the bottomless pit. So what has to happen is you have to tease the two tanks apart. And the way you do that, and this is something you're probably quite familiar with, is through interoceptive awareness.
Yeah.
Right? So interoceptive awareness is really recognizing and responding to your internal body states. So when you say, my head is pounding, my heart is racing, my stomach is growling, that's interoceptive awareness. And by the way, a little aside, the new research that has come out that shows the greater someone's interoceptive awareness, the greater their self-esteem. There's a
that. Yeah.
Have you seen that? It's amazing, right? It's powerful stuff. So interoceptive awareness means, some people call it intuitive eating. I like to call it instinctual eating because when I think of intuition, I think of something different. But at any rate, it's this idea of learning your hunger and satiety signals as sensations in your body. And so people, I'd like to say, I feel like pizza is not a physical hunger signal. It's not a sensation. So what we're looking for are things like a feeling of a contraction or an expansion, or a heaviness, or a lightness, or a roughness, or a smoothness, or a hollowness, or a density, some kind of physical sensation. So most people, again, nobody's fault, we're raised to disregard our hunger and satiety signals, right? We live in a culture that says, oh, you shouldn't eat that because, you need to fit in that bathing suit, even though you're hungry. Or you need to be a member of the Clean Plate Club, even though you're full.
Oh, yeah, I know that. Yeah.
All these reasons to eat when we're not hungry and not eat when we are hungry. So tank A requires really learning your hunger and satiety signals. So many people don't know, and I'll say, okay, what's the physical sensation that you experience when you are hungry, and where in your body do you feel it? Now, often the answer, and you probably hear this too, oh, I get lightheaded and dizzy, or my stomach is growling. That's not hunger, right? That's famished. And what's going to happen if you wait to eat until you're famished? You, me, the rest of us, we're going to eat everything we can get our hands on. That's the design of our bodies. And so I might say, okay, what's the physical sensation of fullness, and where in your body do you feel it? And it might say something like, well, it's kind of hard to breathe, or I have to unbuckle my belt. It's like, no, that's stuffed. And what's going to happen if you eat until you're stuffed on a regular basis? Well, then you're going to be in a body size that's not natural for you. So the way you tease out these tanks apart is you find these signals. And often I tell people, okay, a place to begin, a very practical place, is you say, okay, I'm hungry. Okay, how do I know I'm hungry and where in my body do I feel it? And you look for a sensation. And then you take 2 bites of whatever food you're eating and then ask yourself, okay, am I still hungry? If the answer is yes, ask yourself, how do I know I'm still hungry? And you look inside your body, for that contraction or expansion or heaviness or lightness or whatever it is. And you keep going 2 bites at a time until when you ask yourself, am I still hungry? The answer is no. And then you ask yourself, well, how do I know I'm not hungry? What's the physical sensation that's telling me? And so this process in the beginning, people just know the more dramatic ones. But as time goes on, they'll learn the more subtle sensations because hunger and fullness signals are whispers, not shouts.
Mm.
So let's take an example. Let's say you're reaching for the pizza and to check in, you're looking for a hunger signal, not a hunger signal in sight. Nowhere, no how. But you still want to eat that pizza. Well, guess what? You've just fallen down Alice in Wonderland's rabbit hole and landed smack dab in Tank B. Remember good old Tank B? And in Tank B, pizza's not pizza. Food isn't food. You've landed smack dab in the land of metaphor. So what is it? It's a concrete physical symbol of another kind of hunger you're experiencing and probably don't even know about. So no amount of food is going to ever fill Tank B. So now you have to find what is it? So the question you ask yourself is, what's the feeling I'm trying not to feel? Because you see, we don't eat for emotional reasons. We eat because we don't want to feel our emotions. So you have to ask yourself, okay, what could they, and you do a scan of your day, like, oh, I'm still, annoyed at the jerk who cut me off while I was driving, or maybe I'm worried about an upcoming parent-teacher meeting, or maybe my boss said something that concerned me, or I'm annoyed with my husband, or whatever. You look to see, okay, where could there possibly be a feeling that I'm trying not to feel? This is getting to that emotional literacy part, right? Well, I'm here to tell you and your listeners that more often than not, when you ask this question, the answer is going to be, I don't know. I feel fine. Everything's okay. Right? Because it's out of your awareness. It's unconscious.
Mm.
So the good news is the food will tell you. The food is talking to you, but it's talking in the language of metaphor, which is why you don't quite understand what it's saying. And to understand what it's saying, the foods that you're wanting to eat when you're not hungry or not letting yourself eat when you are, they're speaking metaphorically about your other hungers, but